What's going on, guys? Back at it again with another Ember build for you guys here on the channel. This one is on a Frost Staff tank build that I am calling Winter's Wall. This build is, for lack of better words, remarkable. It's a very good build, guys. And again, I've said this before on previous build videos, but Isabel is a good tank and everything, but Ember's the one that's consistently surprising me because her passives are tailor-made for DPS. However, because of her diverse set of skills in her companion toolset, she is able to fit into any piece or any role and do it remarkably. Because of that, I again was somewhat pleasantly surprised at the fact that this build, a Frost Staff tank, actually performed very well in my opinion. So I'm excited to jump into this one, guys. If you are too, do me a huge favor, drop a like on this video. Also subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, because it really does help this channel grow. So with that being said, enough yapping from me. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. Alright, guys, so I'm going to start off with the Khajiit skill passives because it does require a little bit of talking about. It's called Cunning, and it basically just increases critical chance by 3% and damage done by 3%. This effectively deals no real advantage towards a tank. Mainly because tanks aren't in the business of dealing damage or anything like that, so having critical chance or increased damage done is really irrelevant for this specific build. So because of that, at first glance it seems like this is going to affect negatively on the build, but like I said in the intro, I was pleasantly surprised to really know that this build really does not matter on the passives because her skills on its own is enough for her to be a good tank, and which you guys will see later on when we go fight a world boss. In terms of skills, on the number 1 slot is of course the most important skill in the on the bar, in my personal opinion, and that is your taunt, which is called Destructive Blast. Ember blasts an enemy with magic damage, dealing 8,961 magic damage. But for the Frost Staff specifically, Frost Blast taunts them for 15 seconds. Now, the cooldown is at 16 seconds. We do have a couple of quicken pieces, which we will get to in the gear section. But because of the quicken pieces, we were able to get this down to 15.2 seconds, which 0.2 seconds really means virtually nothing when it comes to tanking. Therefore, she is able to keep taunt 100% of the time with this current setup, which again worked out remarkably. In the second slot, we have Hurricane Visage. Ember manifests themselves as pure lightning, zapping nearby enemies with electricity, dealing 4,473 shock damage over 8 seconds. While in this form, their damage taken is reduced by 20%. The first half of this really is helpful to you as a damage dealer, but it really isn't helpful for her as a tank. Therefore, it's not really a primary focus for me on this specific build. However, the second half of this skill is where you get your bread, where it shines and you get your bread and butter from, which it basically just reduces damage taken by 20%. Effectively allowing her to be less squishy because she has a very big 20% damage reduction because of this skill. The cooldown is at 11.4 seconds as well, which is great, seeing as the cooldown is just an average cooldown, maybe slightly less than average because of our quickened traits that we have equipped. Overall, this is an absolute must in my opinion because it really does help with her survivability. In the number 3 slot, we have Entomb. Ember uses binding magic to immobilize enemies in front of them for 4 seconds and heal themselves for 13,050 health over 8 seconds. The cooldown is at 15.2 seconds, so it is slightly higher than average. However, it is a pretty useful skill, especially for a tank. Not only does it have some utility in the sense of immobilization of enemies in front of them, which is absolutely a great skill to have for crowd control as a tank, the fact that just casting this skill alone gives you a 13,050 health over time regen, is a great addition to this skill. So this does two things. It immobilizes enemies in front of them and heals her for a massive 13,000 health over 8 seconds, making this a fantastic skill all the way around. Even with a slightly higher than average 15.2 second cooldown, it's a must for me in terms of slotting. In the number 4 slot, we have Ritual of Salvation. This is from your Fighters Guild skill line. Ember brands the earth underneath them with a rune of protection for 8 seconds. Standing within the rune reduces the damage they and their allies take by 20%. If the attacker is undead, Daedra, or werewolf, the rune reduces damage taken by an additional 20%. Now, it is important to say that the second half of this is kind of superfluous. It's not really as important as the first half, mainly because it is very circumstantial that you're going to be fighting undead, Daedra, or werewolves. So that additional 20%, I don't really like to add it. However, if you are in one of those situations in which you are fighting those types of enemies, it is nice to know that you get an additional 20% damage reduction. But the first half of this is the bread and butter of this specific skill, in my opinion, because it's not circumstantial, it always applies, which essentially it's just a damage reduction of 20%. So if you're just fighting normal, you know, beasts or monsters or humanoids or a world boss or something, she'll activate this skill and have a 20% damage reduction right off the bat. And this stacked up with Hurricane Visage adds up to 40% all the way around. However, if you are in one of those unique situations where you're fighting one of those three previously said enemy types, undead, Daedra, or werewolves, that's an additional 20% on top of that, effectively being 60% damage reduction all the way around. This is a great skill to have regardless of the second half of the skill because of that initial 20%. So highly recommend this just because it stacks up very nicely to Hurricane Visage. In the number 5 slot, we have Shared Wards. Ember conjured wards made of energy to protect for protection, granting a damage shield for them and nearby allies that absorbs 4,350 damage for 6 seconds. Targets affected by the damage shield are also healed by 4,347 health over 8 seconds. This skill is fantastic for 2 reasons, and that is the both reasons that is in the actual tool set itself. Not only does it give you a damage shield of 4,350, which isn't a massive damage shield, but it does help, of course, for 6 seconds. The fact that it's a damage shield allowing you to just be that much more protected and less squishy helps in a substantial fashion. On top of that, to add to your survivability, everybody, including yourself who's affected by the initial damage shield, is also healed by 4,347 health over 8 seconds, making this skill fantastic for a tank. Last but not least, the ultimate Raging Storm. Ember creates a thunderstorm that follows the target, striking all enemies within for 1,680 shock damage every 1 second for 8 seconds. The final strike deals 300% additional damage to enemies under 25% health. This, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, is an absolute beast of an ultimate for trash mobs because of its very big AoE, the amount of damage over 8 seconds that it does, but also by the time it's done, a lot of the times the trash mobs are under 25% health, so the final strike ends up dealing 300% additional damage to those enemies, effectively acting as an execute on top of the damage over time that it creates. This skill is absolutely fantastic. Not really useful that much for enemies that are very high health, of course, like world bosses, for example, which we will be taking on later on. But for trash mobs, this skill is absolutely fantastic, in my opinion. Highly, highly, highly recommend you run Ember as a damage, as an AoE damage type of individual, or even as a tank who deals a little bit of damage on the side, because of this ultimate. This ultimate is fantastic all the way around, in my opinion. With that being said, let's go ahead and check out her gear. Alright guys, so in terms of gear, I like to emulate my companions in the same fashion that I build my own characters, right? What I mean by that is simple. When I build a build for my own personal character, I go with 2 5-piece sets and a 2-piece monster set typically. Monster sets aren't really a thing for companions, so we'll just call it a 2-piece. Therefore, we'll be running Ember with 2 5-piece sets and a 2-piece set. With that being said, the first 2-piece set is going to be heavy, quickened for both the head and the shoulders. Quickened is the reason why your destructive blast is at 5.2 seconds, allowing you to have the taunt at a 100, pretty much at a 100% uptime. And that's because of these 2 pieces right here. Reduces the ability cooldown by 2.6% per piece, assuming you have purple gear equipped. So this is an absolute must in my opinion. It allows Ember to have her taunt up as much as humanly possible without sacrificing much of anything else. Also, heavy is important because of your heavy armor skill, which is increases healing received by 1% for each piece of heavy armor equipped. Current bonus is of course 7%, slight spoiler there, but it also increases the damage being able blocked by 1% for each piece of heavy armor equipped, which again is 7%, making this an absolute must for tanking builds, and that is heavy. Because of that, the next 5-piece set is also heavy, but a different trait. In this case, it's bolstered. Bolstered, 5 pieces in heavy. Bolstered reduces the damage taken by 1.7%, just making her that much more tanky because she will be taking less damage all the way around with this 5-piece set. Again, all heavy because of the heavy armor passives. So there's that. Bolstered is a very important trait for tanks, alongside with Vigorous as well. In terms of your final 5-piece set, I ended up going with, lo and behold, Bolstered yet again. Because, again, it reduces damage taken by 1.7% and ends up being really well in this specific build, mainly because we don't have any skills that scale off of max health, so I figured Bolstered would be the better choice in this circumstance. So because of that, I went with Bolstered, which increases decreases damage taken by 1.7%. However, the weapon, since it's considered a 2-piece, it reduces damage by 3.4%, effectively reducing a significant amount of damage. Great to have Bolstered on this specific build. With that being said, let's go over to the house and check out her fashion. Alright guys, in terms of fashion, she is using a costume, Crown Shop item if I'm not mistaken, Zaji's Dragon Guard uniform. This looks fantastic in my opinion, plus Zaji's a freaking cool Khajiit in my opinion. Pirate-like almost. I really like him a lot, and it actually fits the profile here a lot in my opinion. In terms of dyes, we have Covenant Blue, one of my favorite blue colors in this game, Blood Gold, and Blood Gold for your final slot. So that's that. In terms of weapon, we have Khajiit Staff 4, Volunteers Iron for the first dye set, Volunteers Iron for the second, and of course Covenant Blue for the final piece. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys think of this specific look. I think it looks fantastic. With that being said, we are going to go fight a world boss at this moment, but because she is operating in a tanking capability, damage is secondary. With that being said, let's go and take on a world boss. Because she is operating in a tanking capability, if another player was to come around, I'm not really going to worry about it too much as long as she is able to stay alive. That's really my primary focus for this specific situation. So let's go ahead and go over and take on a world boss and see how she handles herself in a tanking capacity. And there you have it, guys. Winter's Wall build has officially been completed here on the channel. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys thought of this build. Personally speaking, again, I've said it before, I thought this build was really well. She did everything she needed to do as a tank and did it well, did it remarkably. And to my surprise, even though she doesn't have much in the passives department that really helps her out in terms of tanking, the fact of the matter is she has everything she needs in her tool set to fit that role perfectly. So if you prefer Ember as a companion, maybe personality wise or just the fact of that she's a Khajiit, this is not a bad choice to go with. But enough yapping for me, guys. If you enjoyed this video, do me a huge favor, drop a like on this video. Also subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, because it really does help this channel grow. So with that being said, catch you guys on the next one. Deuces.